History is written by the victor. Or at least I think that's how that line goes. Also guys, keep in mind this entire manga has like biblical church stuff. So if stuff like that makes you angry, like religion, I'm sorry. It's in the game, it's in the manga, it's not me, so nobody can say anything. Alright, anyways, let's get started. Regardless of what I just said though, we see our main man Otto running through the field while monologuing about how his father once warned him of the dangers of Honkai and its potential to destroy the world. Otto questions this statement, telling himself that despite Honkai being the overarching enemy of humanity, at the end of the day, humanity's true enemy is and will always be itself. A la Evangelion. With this in mind, Otto tells himself that since the beginning of times, we humans have always fought against each other in one way or another. In the year 1470, after the fall of Rome, we see Shiskel as one of the largest anti-entropy forces in the world. With its deep connections to the church and the amount of power and the authority that Overseer of Shiskel has, they are able to create a motion called the Great Eastern Crusade. In an event to use Honkai imbued weapons, the knights and princes of Shiskel conquer much of the land outside of Europe. That was until 1475 during the Battle of Kepchak? While fighting the Ming army, Shiskel realizes that the battle is at a stalemate as both forces are equal. However, once they activate their Honkai infused weapons, not only do they kill the Ming army, but also run the risk of potentially getting Honkai poisoning, which will in itself lead to a very gruesome and painful death, or zombification. However, from the feather of a phoenix, we see the great Fuhua appear and single-handedly defeat the entire Shiskel forces. While at the same time, we see Shiskel's most strongest warrior and member, Valkyrie, Kalin Kazlana, using the Oath of Judah that would one day be given to Teresa Apocalypse. During their battle, Fuhua easily defeats Kalin, telling her that with even such a divine weapon, does she know what her actual purpose towards fighting is for? If she even has something worth protecting. Just then, our main man Otto appears and steps between both the Celestial Fuhua and Kalin. The Celestial tells Kalin to think very hard about what she really wants to protect, and with that, the Great Eastern Crusade comes to an abrupt halt. The defeat of Kalin, the strongest Valkyrie among Shiskel, was more than enough to completely break the soldiers of Shiskel. And so, the long journey back to Europe starts, with our main man Otto carrying Kalin like a true simp. While back home in 1476, we learned that due to the cost of the war and at the defeat of the Ming dynasty, Shiskel has imposed a new tax on the people, leaving many to hate the church and Shiskel since it was essentially bleeding the general populace of their money dry. While walking around the city with Otto, Kalin bumps into a little boy and seeing that he dropped his apples, goes to give them back. However, the little boy runs away saying, "Please don't arrest me," showing that the church has not only been hated, but now feared. People begin to whisper around Kalin, stating that she hit the boy for just a few apples. Otto tells Kalin that instead of worrying about the church tax and all those things, they should go get some food as she must be starving. While eating, Kalin sees a priest yelling at a mother, saying that due to her husband not paying the tax, his sin is just simply too deep, and as such the church will acquire the child in a way for her to pay for the labor costs. So basically, if you don't pay your taxes to the church, then the church comes to your home and takes your child as a payment by force. Oh my. Well, Kalin, being the mega chad that she is, steps in and stops the priest from almost hitting the mother and becoming based, saying that he's a disgrace towards the church and what they stand for. The priest mocks Kalin, saying that if she hadn't been so weak and lost the war, the tax would have never been placed. Getting angry, she's stopped by Otto, who asks what the commotion is about. Getting scared at the sight of the overseer's son, the priest leaves, telling the mother that she has 3 days to pay her tax. Trying to comfort the mother, she is told that the shops are closed and that they do not want any of her help. Getting upset, Kalin questions why the people must suffer like this and why was such an awful and vile man like him must be allowed to leave. Otto then gets her attention, stating that being a vigilante won't solve anything, and then recites the Bible quote of, "If one strikes you on the cheek, turn the other and let them strike." At least I think that's how it goes. Regardless, at the plaza they come across a young lady wearing a purple mask surrounded by a crowd as she speaks in rhymes. like Venti's talking basically. While at the plaza, the young lady in the mask says that both Shiskel and the church have been vile and corrupted for a long time, and that it's often the people that suffer either by death or imprisonment. Also, if you're wondering, this is Shakespeare, and the reason I know this is because in the Honkai game, she appears as a stigmata, so that's pretty cool. Well, unlike me, the guards don't much like her speech and proceed to arrest her for slander. Meanwhile, Callan decides someone must do something, and seeing the mask that Shakespeare was wearing, she takes it and puts a cover on herself, thus concealing and attacking the guards, saving Shakespeare. Elsewhere, Otto observes with a concerned look on his face. After taking Shakespeare somewhere safe, she says that she doesn't want the mask due to it being spoiled by a church sister. She instead gives it to her as a token of thanks. Smiling and happy, Callan promises to watch more of Shakespeare's plays. We then return 11 years to the past when Otto was a 13-year-old boy and he's playing with his Arnothaper? Arnothaper? How do you say these words? Meanwhile, we see another individual call him weak and that he's wasting his time playing with toys. From what little info we have, this appears to be Otto's big brother who calls Otto a shame towards the family. As the brother leaves, we then see a young kid Callan who climbs over the fence and tells Otto that the device he made flew so high and was so pretty. She calls Otto amazing and that one day he would be a great inventor, if she only knew. Well, regardless, it is at this moment that the two become pretty good friends, with Callan offering Otto a quest to save the world and make it a better place for everyone. Returning back to 1476, Callan has an idea to rob the priest, whose name is Victor, of his money and give it all back to the people, essentially being a Robin Hood of Honkai. Reluctant but willing to help, Otto shows her various costumes, which he strangely enough all fit Callan. Totally not weird, right guys? Right? Yeah. All the costumes he just pulls out, they fit Callan perfectly. Eventually, she settles for the purple outfit with purple flowers called the Sixth Charade. And the reason I know this is because this one is also in the game, and that's its actual canon name. Can you tell I really love this game? Regardless though, Otto's been playing too much Persona 5 because he then presents her with the final part of Callan's idea, which is to send the priest Victor a calling card, which highlights how his treasures and money would be stolen from right under him, stating that an extraordinary rogues would do it. Meanwhile, the next morning at Victor's residence, a guard presents the letter to Priest Victor. Contained in it, it explains exactly how Victor's riches will be stolen from him. Ignoring the gold, Victor orders the guard to immediately seal the basement and ensure that nobody enters it. We then see an ominous hum as the basement appears to glow in what is a strange Honkai-like color. Later at nightfall, we see Otto distracting the guards in his girly attire, pretending to be hurt. This would be the beginning of several instances where Otto would cross-dress. Meanwhile, Callan sneaks into Victor's house, both smiling at each other as they play their parts. While inside Victor's residence, Callan spots the gold and takes everything she can carry in hopes of returning it to the people. Just then, Victor busts through the door with two guards, saying she brings shame to the Kozlana name due to her sneaking skills and silver hair. Hiding her identity, she proceeds to talk in a manner similar to Shakespeare, or essentially Megumin from Konosuba, one of the two. It's that rhymey type of talking. While hiding her identity, she fights and defeats both of the guards before kicking Victor and using a smoke bomb given to her by Otto to escape. Victor, angered about the stolen gold, utters that at least the basement wasn't broken into and that their secret is still safe. Meanwhile, Otto observes from a distance, seeing the events unfold. All throughout the night, Callan jumps and runs, giving money to all those who were taxed by the church. She then pays the mother and little girl from the beginning a visit and gives the little girl Sasha money, smiling. However, on Sasha's arm, we see the mark of Honkai. We then return 6 years prior to 1470 during what appears to be the Black Plague or the Second Black Plague. I'm not really sure. I believe it's the second one, but if somebody knows, please tell me, because I looked this up and I couldn't find it, so I think this is the second Black Plague, which is actually a real event. This event you see in the manga did actually happen in real life. During this time, doctors and surgeons did everything they could to find a cure, and even use Honkai as a way to try and cure people. During this time, Otto does his best to find a cure by experimenting on people with different, pretty messed up concoctions. One of these ladies was named Eleanor, and while injecting her with a concoction, Otto states that eventually all these victims will die due to the plague. However, Eleanor coughs really hard before eventually saying that all her pain is gone. In fact, the effects of the plague actually start to dwindle within her. Happy and crying, Otto tells himself that he finally found a cure and he did it all for Callan's sake, and that this would make her extremely happy. Eleanor, realizing that Otto just saved her, devotes her entire life to becoming a Valkyrie and vows to repay the kindness Otto showed her. Years later, in 1476, Eleanor, now much older and much more stronger, has become a devoted follower of Shiskel and the church, with her being the last name Shiryak. And if you recognize this, it is Kiana's mother's last name. Or if you played the Snow Herakia arc, it is Anne Shirayak's last name. I should note that the House of Kazlana, Shiryak, and the Apocalypse are mostly clans in a way. It'll become more prevalent about it, but basically, Eleanor is now part of the House of Shiryak. Is that how you say that? Someone's getting angry at me, I can feel it. The next day, Callan and Eleanor are investigating the break-in at Victor's home. Eleanor states that only the vilest of people would rob those from the church. However, Callan instead refutes her, stating that perhaps they only stole the money because they wanted to simply return it to the people. However, Eleanor yells at Callan, stating that Otto and the church saved everybody from the plague and have kept everyone safe from both the Honkai and other invading countries. Callan then tells Eleanor she understands that and that the church can't force people to pay a war tax for something that was essentially her fault. Eleanor leaves, saying that she hopes Callan will at least live up to her duties to protect this church instead of some random rogue. Muttering to herself, Eleanor remarks that Callan was the reason the Crusaders lost and that it's up to her and her alone to defend Europe and destroy the enemies of Shiskel. While this is happening, Victor informs the Overseer and Otto of how it was apparently Callan who had broken into his home to steal his gold. Annoyed, Otto tells him to not bother the Holy Father with such trivial issues. The Holy Father then asks Victor if any results have come from the tests that have been conducted within the basement. He tells Victor to step up his efforts and give in the Cholch results. Begrudgingly, Victor says he'll do whatever it takes. The next morning, Otto can be seen mixing a strange purple concoction together. Callan tells him how smart he is and how she wished she were as smart as he was so that she could also save as many people with plague medication. Callan vows to do her part to protect the weak and innocent. Later that night, Callan is seen doing her Persona 5 sneaking around stuff, and she observes as two shady individuals carry what appears to be an unconscious Sasha. She follows them to the priest Victor's house, where she sees a strange glowing light coming from behind the basement door. Being caught by Victor, she quickly attacks and holds him, asking where Sasha is and what this glowing door does. Making Victor open the door, she is shocked to discover not only Sasha, but multiple girls have been kidnapped and strangled up on a cross, with Sasha exactly in the middle. In front of Sasha, we see what appears to be the black cube. While trying to get answers from Victor, Otto can be seen within the corridor hiding, asking himself why Callan is here and why she had to see what she wasn't supposed to. Heard Victor, Callan demands answers and to let the girls go. Victor exclaims that the girls are necessary to find the cure for the plague and that so many people have been killed in the experiments towards it. Angered, Callan tells him to tell her the truth, to which Victor explains that the main purpose of this is to actually unlock the black cube and wield its powers. Using its powers, they will avenge their loss at the Ming army and continue their crusade to purge the world of Honkai. Just then, Eleanor and the Valkyries show up, with Eleanor stating that she knew Callan would betray Shiskel and the church. Lost in the love for the church and Shiskel, Eleanor refuses to listen to the reason as she fights Callan, summoning her weapon, the Black Spear, in an effort to hurt or kill Callan. Using the Black Spear vapors, Eleanor easily brings Callan to her knees, and just as she's about to deliver the killing blow, Otto steps in, completely halting her attack. Shocked she hurt Otto, Eleanor immediately stops and apologizes for what she did. Otto orders the Valkyries to simply take Callan away to the prison, and afterwards falls unconscious due to the Black Spear's deadly vapors. We then return to a time where we see young Otto and Callan watching a man fight Honkai Beast. This man is Francis Kazlana, who during the fight doesn't realize there's a Honkai Beast coming closer to the young kids. Sometime after, he sacrifices his life to protect both Callan and Otto, stating it's the path of a Kazlana to die as a warrior. Using the judgment of Shamama? These names. Using the judgment of Shamama? At full strength, he inevitably dies. At the funeral, Kid Otto sees Callan cry at the death of her father. Otto then hears a voice tell him it's the Kazlana oath to die a warrior, before once again seeing a coffin, this time with Callan burning inside. The mysterious child presents Otto with two cubes, one being the golden cube and the other being the black cube. Waking up from his nightmare, Otto rushes to the prison to see Callan, only to see his father, who berates Callan for doing something so foolish, saying that both the Ming army as well as the plague are a threat that must be dealt with, and that now is not the time for heroics. Seeing his son approach, the Holy Father tells Otto to ensure Callan stays on the right path. Otto explains that what his father is saying is true. The tests and human experiments they have all been performing is to unlock the black cube and use it to master its powers to defeat the Honkai. Callan, upset, tells Otto what he's doing is wrong and that she would gladly sacrifice herself to protect those girls, as that's what it means to bear the Kazlana name. Angered, Otto grabs Callan and yells at her, "What good is she dead if dead people can't save anything or anyone?" right before Callan slaps our main man Otto. We then return to 1466, in which Otto explains how a sire, that's a traveler of the church, had brought back two mysterious items from Asia, one being the black cube and the other being the golden cube. You see, after the death of Francis Kazlana, Otto wanted to make Callan happy, so he decided that if he unlocked the golden cube, maybe he could find a way to bring Francis Kazlana back. Undoing the golden cube seal, he speaks to the mysterious voice, and it tells him that it has been over 2,000 years since someone has spoken to him. Otto requests that the cube bring back Callan's father, who died in battle. The cube laughs, saying that bringing back the dead is very easy, but to steal from death also requires its own payment of life, essentially an exchange. Otto accepts these terms, willing to sacrifice himself towards seeing Callan happy. Otto then returns to a grieving Callan at her father's grave. The golden cube then has Otto use the mimicry of the abyss flower for the life exchange. However, just as he's about to, Otto tells Callan that he will make Francis live again and that he would do anything for Callan's happiness. However, Callan slaps Otto, stating that her father died protecting them and that as a Kazlana, it is an honor to die protecting those you love, telling him the phrase, "We Kazlanas may die, but we never yield." Shocked, Otto apologizes to Callan as they both cry. The golden cube sees Otto's weakness and says that he has more than enough patience towards getting a new body. Returning to the present, 1476, after Callan slaps Otto, she yells at him that her father had been alive, he would have burned that terrible place to the ground and saved all of the girls within that basement. Otto explains that he'll free her and the girls, but the black box is something that's even out of his control. Returning Sasha to her parents, Callan has a moment to herself where she thinks of the family oath she upholds as a Kazlana. Eventually, this all leads her to return her father's grave, feeling lost and confused on what to do. Remembering her father's words, Callan returns to a time when she was a child and she sees her father telling her that he feared there was a day coming, a day in which she would become a true Kazlana. She then remembers her father's words to keep looking forward, even when using the judgment of Shamama? Hearing her father's words one last time, he tells her that he is proud of having a daughter who will defend the weak in his place. Callan takes the oath one last time, filled with a new resolve, and walks towards the church. Meanwhile, at the cathedral church, Eleanor, using the black spear, is able to finally unlock the black cube for the Holy Father. However, just then, Callan, using the Oath of Judah, busts through the window Dante style and declares that the Church, Shiskel, and House Apocalypse all failed humanity due to them murdering the weak for their own personal greed. Angered, Eleanor yells that she'll strike Callan down and end her. Just then, Callan remembers the celestial Fuhua's words from the beginning, who asked what she fought for, as those who don't protect will never unlock a divine weapon's true power. Having her answer for the celestial, Callan fights and easily defeats Eleanor, who in her state of anger and craziness uses the gem from the black cube and infuses with it, telling herself and Callan that she will become the sacrifice for both Otto and God. Before turning into a Honkai human hybrid? I don't know if this is a Harakia or a pseudo Harakia, but I'll let you guys decide. And if somebody can tell me, please. I think this is a pseudo Harakia since it's a shard of the black cube, but maybe it's just a Honkai beast. Who knows? Maybe it's probably just a judgment. Regardless, during the battle, Callan tries to deduce how to fight Eleanor's new Honkai form. From dodging and attacking, Callan is eventually able to bind Eleanor down and tells her that she will find a way to cure her new Honkai condition, showing that despite being enemies, Callan still wants to save Eleanor. Otto appeared, to which Callan states that the black cube won't save anyone and in fact will only do much more harm to those who try to wield it. While distracted, Eleanor makes one last attempt to kill Callan by firing a Honkai laser at her. In a split-second decision, Otto tries to warn her, but seeing that he's too late and slow, the Honkai Cube tells Otto that the only way to save her is by using its powers, otherwise Callan will die. With his desire to see Callan alive, Otto uses the Golden Cube's mimicry of Shamama? Gun Pistol Edition? These names, man. And shoots Eleanor, to which Callan, using the Oath of Judah, slices right through Eleanor as well. As Eleanor dies, from her body emerges the black mist, trying to find a new vessel. It sees Otto and realizes that he has already been taken, but then sees Callan, who then it exclaims will be a perfect body to take over. Callan is then absorbed into another plane, to which we are greeted by a large samurai-looking creature. This is Juzo Mitama, and the reason I know this is because, can you guess? That's right, the game. FYI, he's really tough to fight even with S-rank Callan, so what? Regardless, Juzo offers Callan a chance to become all-powerful and essentially even more of what Eleanor became. Callan denies this and strongly opposes the Honkai beast. However, just as she seems to lose all hope, her father emerges, stating that she has a gift in her, that the Kizlanas have fought the Honkai for over 50,000 years, and that they never yield to anyone. Callan, with her father's help, uses the Kizlana belief as a weapon towards fighting Juzo, stating that in the end, Kizlanas have the most powerful thing ever: the ability to believe that humanity will survive over the Honkai no matter what happens. As Juzo dies, he vows to have his revenge against Callan, obvious foreshadowing for the eventual Samsara arc. Waking up, Callan sees Otto, who was worried and was about to go get the doctors. However, Callan stops him and instead says that the Black Cube has corrupted far too many people and must be sealed and hidden away from humanity. Callan pledges to leave Europe and find somewhere where the cube can be sealed forever. Otto, powerless to stop her, simply lets her walk away. Sometime later, we see Callan injured searching for the Celestial of the Ming Empire within Mount Takshuan. However, upon finding her temple, it has completely been destroyed and set aflame. And this whole event actually connects to the main game. It's pretty interesting what happened to this entire mountain, and I am curious to know more, so if somebody knows, please tell me, or I'll probably just make a video on it. I am really interested to see what happened on Mount Takshuan and how the Celestial's temple has essentially just been wiped out and destroyed. Regardless, with Shiskel Valkyries hunting her down and following her, Callan continues east, hoping that she can seal the Black Cube somewhere. And in this eastern pursuit, she eventually goes across Miko Village. Now, we're gonna cover the Miko Village manga in another video sometime later, so stay tuned for that. However, Sometime after Callan leaving, Otto uses the remains of Eleanor's body to create a serum in an effort to make stronger and more loyal Valkyries. However, all his attempts end in Valkyries turning insane or simply dying. Seeking new knowledge, he uses the Golden Cube event again to enter the Void Archives. Within the archives, the little kid that looks like child Otto, called Void Archives, I'm just gonna say VA because I don't want to confuse anybody. So VA states that anything from stronger Valkyries to better technology or even more powerful medicines can be found here within the infinite knowledge. VA tells Otto that all of it can be his for a price, that price being his body. Otto glares at VA, to which it states that payment can come by later. Just then, Otto is interrupted as he receives a letter from Callan. In the letter, Callan tells him of a place called Yai Village where she fought a terrible creature created by the Black Cube. This creature being Higokumura. Higokumura, basically the giant fox from Honkai. This is actually where the story of Callan takes place during the Yai Village arc, with her meeting and falling in love with Yai Sakura. She tells Otto that there's someone she wants to save, and that person is obviously Yai Sakura. Otto then recites a Macbeth line, which has to do with human life and how easily it's lost. I think that's a Macbeth line. Regardless, Otto, while kneeling in front of the Oath of Judah, realizes that the problems soon to come are way beyond the scope of human wisdom. But wait, there's more. That's right, it's time for an extra story. So we follow Schrodinger in what appears to be the quantum sea or the imaginary space. One of the two. If somebody knows this, please tell me, because I am so confused by this part. Schrodinger tells us that she has traveled around various bubble worlds and calls the one she just landed in the strangest. Immediately, she is greeted by a small elf-like creature. These are the same elves we've seen in both Honkai Impact and in the Honkai Impact anime. They greet her and do the most adorable attempt at pronouncing human? Human? Ooman? The elves then walk away, chalking it up to the strange human just being another one of Jingwei's figures to try and fool them. However, Jingwei tries her best to convince them that this is actually indeed a real organic person. We learn from one of the elves that in this reality, humans are all but extinct, and it has been a long time since anyone even saw an organic person. Schrodinger pets Jingwei, to which she immediately begins to proclaim herself as being an incredible elf historian and attempts to have Schrodinger call her master. Schrodinger, ignoring Jingwei, then points towards a strange giant tree with solar panels on it. Jingwei explains that it's actually an elf paradise with batteries that power the elf city. We learn that the elves have been around for over thousands of years, and that due to many of the elves not following the rules, often parts of the city have to get rebuilt due to their destructive capabilities. Jingwei then explains that the reset house allows for any elf to essentially change their appearance. Basically just another way of GTA style buying furniture and clothing. This also explains why certain elves in the Honkai game look the way they do. Jingwei states that although optional, many elves use it mostly to change their outfits or appearances or hairstyles or hair color. We also learn that the planet they are on is called Mu, so I'm not actually sure if this connects to the main canon, but for now we'll call it canon. We'll call it the messed up future. Jingwei also explains that throughout the years, they pray and offer goods to a temple they call the Majestic Temple in hopes of having a good and fruitful year. Interested in the temple, Schrodinger crawls through an opening and finds what appears to be an old computer. While taunting Schrodinger, Jingwei says that the creator had been the one who left such an item behind and that they haven't been able to open it. Jingwei then says that she can try and unlock it and offers Schrodinger a diesel or petrol drink before realizing that humans require solids to eat, and then states that she's leaving to make Schrodinger some rubber instead. I don't know what that means, but hey, more power, right? Just then, the monitor flashes and Schrodinger is able to unlock the computer. In it plays a video of Einstein with a message of how humanity faces a danger known as the Honkai, and how within the computer holds notes towards a special project that may play a role in defeating the Honkai. Now, I might make a video on the elves, since there's way more here than what's let on. It's pretty interesting as it ties to the fire moths and the previous era stuff. But there is the issue that it's not been translated, so this first chapter is all I have to go on. So if this seems a little short, that's the reason. The chapters 2 and 3 haven't been translated, and I don't know Chinese. I believe it's still in Chinese or Japanese. I don't know those two languages. I only know Spanish. So sadly, this is where this part ends. Anyways, I've been ChipCube, and now if you'll excuse me, I've got a portal to walk through because I want to make my own little elf friends. Now go on and watch The Beauty of Kiana Kazlana, an examination and explanation of one of Honkai's most well-crafted main characters.